part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
This episode of Cavs on the Break NBA podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service providing professional, affordable, and personalized therapy in a convenient online format. BetterHelp removes the traditional barriers to therapy and makes mental health care accessible to everyone. I've been using BetterHelp for the last 3 months, and I have to say, it has been absolutely amazing. Signing up was super simple, and after a brief survey, BetterHelp assigned me a licensed counselor to specifically help me through my problems. The app is super user-friendly and doesn't bog you down with the busy user interface, and you can talk or message with your therapist straight through the app. Valuing your mental health is one of the most important things you can do, and there's no better way to start than BetterHelp. Cavs on the Break is proud to highlight this company and offer a promotional code at checkout. Use promo code CAVSP3 for 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. That's CAVSP3 at checkout for 10% off the first month of counseling with BetterHelp. You will not regret investing in your mental health. This episode of Cavs on the Break NBA podcast is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Newark AutoBody. With winter weather and slick road conditions comes black ice and accidents. And if you've been in an accident and your car needs a little TLC, look no further than Newark AutoBody and Zanesville AutoBody. Safe, reliable collision repairs is their business. Newark AutoBody and Zanesville AutoBody is a local, family-run, and veteran-owned business serving Newark, Zanesville, and surrounding areas. And guess what? They work with all insurance providers to make your experience hassle-free. And if you're a U.S. military veteran, even better. Ask about their special discounts for vets at the shop, and they'll be happy to help. Look, it can be hard to find a trustworthy car mechanic, but the people over at Newark AutoBody and Zanesville AutoBody have you covered. They do. They care for you first and make sure they keep you safe and get you back on the road as quickly as possible. Visit them at autobodyofnewark.com and autobodyofzanesville.com to get your repair started today. You can find those links in our show notes. Their iCar Gold Class team of skilled collision repair technicians will make your vehicle like new again. Again, that's Newark AutoBody and Zanesville AutoBody, partnering with Press Play Podcasts.
Your long wait for a new podcast is over. I'm Steve Phillips, and I'm super excited to announce that I will be doing a brand new podcast, Exit Polls, will be part of the Press Play Podcast Network. A little bit about myself. I'm a proud native of Cleveland Heights, Ohio. I have the same roots as Super Bowl champions Jason and Travis Kelce, although I do not know and have never met Taylor Swift. I'm an author, activist, observer of politics, and I've written 2 best-selling books, Brown is the New White and How We Win the Civil War, that help to dissect and analyze what's happening in our nation's politics. I bonded with Chase Smith of the Press Play Podcast Network over our shared outrage over the Cleveland Browns selling their soul to sign a certain quarterback. As we got to know each other the past couple years, Chase asked me to consider hosting Exit Polls. And I'm happy to do it and happy to be here. As the political season heats up, we'll be coming to you every other Friday to make sense of and perhaps make fun of what's going on in national politics. Offer some information, education, a little fun. May even throw in a few sports metaphors to grasp what's happening in national politics. We start on April 12th. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in and join us on Exit Polls.
Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
What's good, Breakers? That sound means it's time for Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Playoff Press Edition, the final Playoff Press Edition episode. I am your host, Chase Smith, and with me, he's the NBA writer for HoopsWire.com. He's our Cavs insider, national NBA writer, Sam Amico. Also with us, John Sabol, sports Fox 8, host of Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast, right here in the Press Play Podcast Network. Fellas, you were right. Celtics advanced to the Eastern Conference Finals, defeating the Cavaliers 4-1, winning 3 straight. First off, kudos to you both. I'm going to give you both 3 minutes to gloat, 1 for every correct prediction of a Cavs loss. Sam, you're up first.
Well, I don't want to gloat because that wasn't really the result I was hoping for. It was just what I expected. And then I really expected it after Donovan Mitchell went down. Didn't have Jared Allen the whole series. And then you lose Karis LeVert in the closeout game. It was just, they got, I know a lot of fans are disappointed, but I just look at it, guys, and we said this before. They probably should have played better against Orlando, won that series in 4 or 5 games. And you were hopeful that they would stretch Boston to, 6 or 7 and maybe get a miracle in game 7. But we covered this before, Chase. You brought it up before. Went to the play-in tournament 2 years ago. Last year went to the first round. This year, second round. But no matter how you spin it, they're taking the next natural steps and the next natural progression. So that's the way I look at it. It's not all, it's not all doom and gloom. It's not rainbows and unicorns, but it's not all doom and gloom either.
Sam used 2.5 minutes. John, you get a fresh 3.
Well, it's kind of one of those things, Chase, when you kind of see the flaws of a team and those flaws reel its ugly head, and then you have injuries pop up out of nowhere, and it was doom and gloom for a little while there. But it's all not that surprising just because of the overmatchedness, if that's a word, matchness. And just their inconsistent shooting, even when they were healthy, and Boston's just too experienced and too cohesive. Those guys have been playing together for a long time. So I would like to have thought that if Jared Allen and Donovan Mitchell were playing that series, it could have been stretched a lot longer. But they were behind the 8 ball to begin with without Jared Allen. And I know we'll get into it, but that might be the last time we'll see him in a Cavs uniform.
Yes, and we're not going to spend a ton of time talking about that series because that's not what everyone's talking about today. I think Jaylen Brown and Tatum have played a lot together. I think most of the team has a lot of experience, right? Horford is older than us, and they've just done a great job of surrounding those players with complementary players and one of the best defensive backcourts in the league, which just causes fits. And so I think that I don't know if the team has played a lot of games together. I know Brown and Tatum have played a lot.
Well, I was
together.
referring to the core of Tatum and Brown. I mean, think about it. Those two guys were on the 18 team that the Cavs eliminated in the Eastern Conference Finals to go to the finals. So that's pretty much all their team. It's Tatum and Brown. Yes, Horford. Yes, Holiday, Pritchard, whatever. I mean, Porzingis non-factor. It's Tatum and Brown. It's those two.
Yeah, you're right. It's all they need, really. I mean, they've just done a great job. But let me tell you, as soon as that series ended, it was like this gag order embargo was lifted, and out come the articles, out come the headlines. We got a season's worth of headlines in 12 hours, 18 hours, and 24 hours, just nonstop. I want to just kind of read through what all has hit the Twitterverse, all the airwaves, all the conversation just since game 2 ended. And I'm just going to say it all, get it all out there, because we're going to talk about it all here on this podcast. Again, not talking about series 2. We've done enough. Here's all that's happened. And then we're just going to kind of go through the list. Here's all that I have. If I miss anything, please let me know. Mobley not wanting to be drafted by the Cavs, or at least his camp telling the Cavs not to draft him. Bickerstaff, kind of, yes, on the hottest of seats. Is he going to coach? Maybe flirting with Redick and, his ties with LeBron. Bickerstaff also in the news because he was admonished in front of his whole coaching staff for playing Mitchell too hard in December against Houston. But also with that, after that game in overtime, Mitchell was out for a handful of games, they said, because of COVID and not because of an injury. And also was the reason why he turned down Team USA. He almost was asked if they would have lost to Detroit. Now Mitchell is staying in Cleveland. Rumors galore. There could be a Jarrett Allen trade. Garland his agent, Rich Paul, is open to a trade from the Cavs. Allen passed on an injection where he could have played in round 2, and the team was upset. Mitchell at once was frustrated with the lack of maturity or seriousness, but then he's frustrated at that report that the media reported. Dan Gilbert is back in the chair making All of this has come out since a series 2. Sam, what is going on in Hooswire? You guys are going to be just like, wait,
I will say this. Some of the stuff Sam and I have talked about on the podcast before.
Yes. Yes, but it's all kind of just like resurfacing, coming up, pulling up. Hoopswire, Sam, you're just like, this is it, man. This is your time to shine, baby.
Yeah, I mean, it was easy to write because, like you just said, there was just so much that came out that it's like, well, these things are kind of writing themselves because, you know, all this is, like you said, it was like a gag order was lifted, like
unbelievable
moments. This was my least read dribbles of the year, and I totally get it.
Yeah.
It's because after the dribbles came out, I posted dribbles, and I mean, within 5 minutes, the floodgates opened. Yes. And I was like, wow. So
Shams is breaking news. Woj is breaking news.
Yeah,
Jason
now
Lloyd, all
Donovan Mitchell says he's happy in Cleveland. He told Woj tonight. We just posted it.
Donovan he added Mitchell, to his bio Cleveland guard on Twitter.
Yeah.
No, that's been that way. That's been there a while.
Oh.
Well, so I think, you know, and I did, you know, my 330 to go show on Facebook earlier, and I tried to break down what's fact and what's fiction and what's kind of in between. And I think there's, you know, when it comes to like the one that struck me the most, guys, was when I saw the report, and I didn't aggregate this on Hoopswire.
Should we guess? John, do you know this answer? What surprised Sam the most?
Ashish wrote this one, and it surprised me the most that this came out this quickly.
I can't remember who reported what, but the thing that surprised me the most might be the same as Sam's, but was Jared Allen refusing to take an injection allegedly.
That was a big one. That was not it, but that, I mean, I could see where that would be a big surprise. The one that
there's just so many.
Yeah, go ahead. Chase.
What surprised you the most was Evan Mobley's camp coming out at this moment, not wanting to be drafted or advising against.
That's a great because all of these things are so surprising. That's a fair guess too.
But you know, the whole Mobley thing, real quick, guys, like that happens every draft. I mean, that happens all the time. Why did that just come out now, or is that just kind of like slipped in there? Like,
yeah, I thought
it's kind of irrelevant to the situation if I'm being honest.
Well, I think that they kind of stated that they cleared it up, that he was fine with it. Yeah,
unless they're pivoting that he could be traded as well. Well, I have a second guess, Sam. Is it how he was like admonished in front of his whole coaching staff?
No, that was surprising though. They're all surprising. The one that surprised me the most was I did not expect to see news that Darius Garland, Rich Paul would request a trade if Donovan Mitchell signs an extension because there's never been any hint publicly that those two have less than a glowing relationship. Yeah. We saw Donovan Mitchell in the playoffs with his arm around Darius
multiple times.
So it's almost as if that camp, Rich Paul's camp, is blaming Donovan for Darius's terrible season this year.
You can't see this, but I have my Windhorse fingers up. It means that they listen to the pod, Sam. It means that Garland and Rich Paul listen to the pod. That's what it means.
They may, who knows? But I just look at it like, yeah, I think that we've all kind of been saying that either podcast or whether you're a fan or you know, maybe the coaching staff, who knows? But we all kind of look at it like, is that going to work? We're in year 2 now. We just finished year 2 of the Garland Mitchell thing, and they always seem to play better without the other one on the court, especially Garland. Because Garland was not good with Mitchell on the court. Mitchell's still very good with Garland on the court. So I just think that that's very interesting. And my other thought, guys, when I said that, or when I saw that and read it, my first thought was, hey, Rich Paul, you're preaching to the choir when it comes to Caps fans and media, because they're thinking if Mitchell signs that extension, you trade Garland. You know, so I don't think that. I just found it interesting that if that's really the case, and I believe it is because it was reported by, three very good reporters in Jason Lloyd, Joe Varden, and Sham Sharina, that Rich Paul is going to go to the Cavs and suggest that maybe they trade Darius Garland should Donovan Mitchell resign, and I'd say go for it. If you're the
So
Cavs.
here's the thing with that, Sam, which I find interesting, is that the fact that they would say that now, what is the benefit of them saying that publicly now? I mean, you say that, it's almost hinting that they know that there's a damn good chance that Darius or Donovan Mitchell is going to resign, which is great. I think that there's a better chance that he resigns and people probably lead on. That's not Homer take here. That's just, I think you're not turning down.
He needs
that
to stay out of the
contract.
West. People aren't going to. Yeah.
Well, it's just not the West too. It's just the money. Like, you're not turning down $200 million and waiting another year to get $60 more million after hurting your knee and your calf. I mean, that's just bad business. So, I mean, hey, maybe he bets on himself and he's healthy again. But you know what I mean? Like, that is surprising that Rich Paul would make that public. But at the same time, it's like, okay, maybe they might actually really think that signing is going to happen.
Well, the sense around the league is that he's going to sign. That doesn't mean that he's going to sign the extension. And the biggest reason is it be a financial decision. I mean, you're giving up tens of millions of dollars if you don't sign that extension, if you decide you're going to go somewhere else. Now, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, it's not a big deal. You'll find that money in endorsements. When have you guys seen Donovan Mitchell on commercials? They don't need that in their NBA contract. Donovan Mitchell, if he walks away from $10 million or more to sign with, say, the Miami Heat or the Lakers or whatever, you're not getting that money back unless, you really step it up in terms of endorsements and all that stuff. Because he's not on the level of a LeBron, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant when it comes to, well, first of all, what he's accomplished, as well as he's not getting the endorsement money that those guys get. They can walk away from 10 or $20 million and they're going to, in their NBA contract, they're going to make it up elsewhere. Donovan Mitchell probably isn't.
Yep.
The interesting thing is, if he signs the extension, Sam, do you expect it to be the full 4 years, or will it be 3 years, 2 years? I mean,
I would expect it to be the full 4 years. It's not that, I mean, why would you shortchange yourself other than, like you said, take a risk on yourself that in 2 years you can get an even bigger extension? But I think you just take the full 4 years. It's going to be probably weighted toward the back end of that.
So
I think everybody's saying that it would be the full 4 years.
So what's the first domino to fall here? I mean, because a lot's in play. We have Mitchell's in play. We have Bickerstaff in play. We have the future of Garland and Allen. Like, what is that extension the first domino to fall? Or is there a future where we trade Garland, Mitchell doesn't resign? What happens first here?
Well, what happens first is they got to figure out the coaching situation. They got to decide if JB Bickerstaff is that answer, if they're going to continue to roll with him, because there's not many good candidates out there. I know Sam and I, you and I have talked about some guys that we think that could be out there, but like a Terry Stotts or whoever, but there's no sexy hire here.
JJ Redick.
That's it.
Yeah.
With LeBron caveat.
So they apparently saying that they're going to wait. They're going to take their time, right? They're going to go through the motions here. I can tell you, Kobe Altman's going to be going to the combine in Chicago, and at the earliest of him doing any type of media availability, if anything happens, it would be the end in a week from now, at the very earliest. Which means, if that's the case, you either going to have a week here of what's going to happen with Bickerstaff, because Kobe's not going to be in town. So if they fire him, we know it's not going to be his call. It's probably going to be Dan's call. And if you fire him, we're going to have a dead air of not talking to him until a week. If you don't fire him, you're going to be talking to him anyways if they do any type of availability, because the Cavs have not done anything since they got back from Boston, and they're not planning on doing any. So Bickerstaff is the first domino to fall. Do you keep him or do you fire him? Who do you get? The next thing is Donovan Mitchell can start negotiating for his extension June 30th, and the earliest he can sign it is July 6th. And so that's when free agency opens up there in early July. After that, Then you get your trades. Then you get your ducks in a row if you want to deal Allen, if you want to deal Darius Garland. Sam, do you agree?
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's all accurate. I think JB
Mhm.
Bickerstaff is the first decision that you're going to make, because that's a decision, if you're the Cavs, that's totally in your control.
Yeah.
Donovan Mitchell, not in your control. Other than you offer him the extension, you wait for an answer. Darius Garland, not in your control still, because if he does decide he wants traded, well, you need a dance partner. Somebody's got to take that deal. So there's those things that are out of your control. You kind of wait on those. I think, though, we will all know about Donovan Mitchell well before June 30th. I suspect that we know by the middle of June what he's going to do without him coming out and saying it. Woj or Shams, somebody is going to break that news, what he intends to do. I suspect, it's going to be one of the big national newsbreakers that do that. And it'll all be official, like you said, John, whatever he decides in late June, early July. So, yeah, I think right now you're focused. If you're the Cavaliers, no doubt in my mind, they're focused on what are we going to do about the coaching situation.
And who makes that decision? Is that Kobe Altman? Is that Dan Gilbert? Is that a combination of the two? Like at this point, who is making that decision, Sam?
Dan Gilbert will run it by Kobe Altman. Now, if Dan Gilbert wants JB Bickerstaff gone, he'll just tell Kobe Altman, yeah, we're getting rid of him. That's how Dan has handled things in the past anyway, with Mike Brown, which in 2010 led to Danny Ferry quitting. So and then Dan Gilbert just fired Chris Grant like in the middle of the season or toward the end of the season in February. He just fired Chris Grant because he didn't want Mike Brown to coach. And he's like, you hired him, so I'm firing you for bringing him back. So and then Dan Gilbert let David Griffin fire Mike Brown after the season. But yeah, so I think it's if Kobe Altman if Dan Gilbert doesn't care, like say he's like fine either way if JB gets fired or comes back, then it's going to be totally Kobe Altman. If Dan Gilbert really wants JB Bickerstaff out, he's going to say, we need a new coach. And Kobe Altman's probably going to say, yeah, okay. I don't think that Kobe would go to bat and risk his own job for going to bat. But I do think more often than not with Dan Gilbert, it's calling Kobe in. What are we thinking? What are we doing about the coach? What do you think? I don't think there's going to be any edict that I doubt it that he's going to say, we're getting rid of this guy.
John, if you had the power, what would be your decision?
Man, I need to first off talk to my players. If I'm Kobe and Dan, I need to talk to some of my players because I think there is a rift in that locker room. Some guys that are not happy with JB Bickerstaff and not happy with, some of his lack of adjustments, his in-game planning, his practice setups, their playing time. Marcus Morris threw him under the bus in this post-game press conference last night, saying I should be playing more. So I would weigh that roster, the guys that are going to be here next year. The guys that are under contract. I mean, assuming it's like Levert and Strus and Mitchell if he can come or whoever, you need to weigh that. If there's a disconnect there, then you got to get rid of them. Here's the thing, though. The fact that they were undermatched in this Boston series with the injuries and played as well as they did in every single game, pretty much there, says a lot. I mean, if they really didn't like him, they would have quit on him. You could see the body language. You could see the body language, but you never saw it. So, it could be a case of, some of these guys just, complaining to complain. But there is some validity to there, the lack of adjustments and, handling timeouts and, just having a feel for the game. But I don't know, like if these guys were really trying to send a message not wanting to play or if they were trying to do whatever, you didn't see it. If there is a disconnect there, then you got to get rid of them. The question, though, is who are you going to get? Where are you going to go? You've made steps, play in 1 year, next year, first round, next year, which was this year, the second round. Is it simple as continue to make those steps? Is it personnel? How much is it the coach? It's very interesting. It's very interesting, Chase, because if Dan was making this decision, I think Dan would make this decision a lot faster than Kobe would. And like I say, I think you got a week here of figuring that out.
One of the things I noticed in this Boston series was a level of comfortability and confidence I haven't seen Garland and Mobley play in the playoffs until this series. It seemed like they found their playoff legs, that whether, they were forced to because of injuries, like someone has to score and do something in this basketball game. You know what I mean? But I did see a level of playoff basketball readiness from those two players, particularly near the last half of the Boston game series, that I hadn't seen in any of the previous playoff series. And that gave me a little bit of hope, Sam, and both of those players and the future of our team. And it made me kind of reevaluate what their future could look like here in Cleveland. I don't, they're so young. They are so young, and our expectations were so skewed by the trade of Donovan Mitchell. And so I've been hard on them. We all have been hard on them, and that's part of being a professional. You when you get there, you got to perform. But I want to give them credit, whether it was because they believed in the coach or whether it was because they just, found a little bit more confidence and composure. I thought they really helped, to John's point, show out for their coach and for the city and for the team in this Boston series.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's working in JB Bickerstaff's favor is exactly that. This team, I watched them every game this year. They played hard every game. There were times it looked like they might not be playing hard because they couldn't pull it together, but they were playing hard. And they had every reason to mail it in game 5 against Boston. They didn't have Mitchell. They didn't have Allen. They didn't have LeVert. I've seen it. I've been around the NBA a long time. It doesn't make me an expert. I've just been watching it for 20 years as a job, and I've seen teams that do quit to get their coach fired.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that in game 5. I mean, they played...
Or game 4. Game 4 and 5 were close.
Right. They played incredibly hard, and all year they played hard. There were times they played dumb, but that's not trying to get your coach fired. That's just not doing the right thing. Now, that's working in his favor, okay? That's a big deal. The players seem to play hard for the coach. I saw it with Mike Brown. They gave up on him twice. The Cavs of the Kyrie Irving, Deion Waiters year did. So did the LeBron James. Mike Brown.
They gave up on Beeline, right? I mean,
they gave up on him, right? Like in training camp.
They gave up on David Blatt too.
They did. They gave up on David Blatt. So I think there's that element of that's working in the favor of JB Bickerstaff. Is now what is working against him is we didn't see Mobley take that next step. Yeah. We didn't see Darius Garland, and I know people are going to talk about Evan Mobley's numbers. Well, his scoring's up, his shooting's up, he's better on three-point percentage. I don't care about that. The eye test is he's not helping you win games offensively. Defensively, and he's elite defensively. Offensively, you could say he took a slight step forward, but people want more than a slight step. So the question is, and Darius Garland went the other way. You're talking about the big picture, the whole season. Yeah. He was worse. So that's what you look at, in part of your evaluation. It's like, why aren't our guys developing? Why are some of them getting worse? Now, maybe that's on the player, but maybe it's also on the coach. Why aren't you setting guys up to succeed? I had somebody talking to me about the Cavs in the NBA who said, why are they not getting Sam Merrill open looks? Why are they not getting Max? Why you have these shooters on your team and you just throw them out there? It's like you need to create offense for these guys and get them looks because they're going to knock it down. So, I mean, there are those questions, fair or not, that are hanging over JB's head. But the reality again is, let's put it this way. The example I thought of earlier was James Borrego with the Charlotte Hornets. Every year, they took an additional step. 3 years under Borrego. They won 10 more games in 3 straight seasons under Borrego, and they fired him. And guess what? The Charlotte Hornets have been absolute trash since. So to me, it's like, and to John's point, if you're going to fire the coach, you better make sure it's somebody who's getting you out of the second round next year. Because you got to the second round this year, don't want to hire somebody who gets you to the second round next year. You want somebody to get you to conference finals. So I don't know. I mean, you could make a case for both. And I know fans get worked up. Look, I get it. I'm a fan of that team you don't pay any attention to anymore, Chase, the Browns. But Kevin Stefanski could be in the coach of the year running. And I don't care. First quarter, the Browns are down. Fire him now. I mean, I get that emotion because it's, I'm a fan too of some teams. So I get it when you say fire the coach, but I also think there's a lot to be said for familiarity. And I think that, as John said, you've got to talk to the players. That's your first situation, or your first, when you're evaluating the coach. Well, and you don't take everything they say as gospel, but you at least listen to what they have to say.
It's crazy to think, though, it's been 5.5 years.
Yeah.
I know.
I had as a double take when I read that. I was like, whoa.
I was so young when they hired him.
Yeah, Sam didn't have any gray hair.
Can I speak to that real quick, John? Just
to
that stability. I think another thing stability brings, and that familiarity is, I think players' true colors and character really show. And so we are able to see how people take serious practice. We are able to see people's habits and their rhythms because of the stability and the familiarity people have with a coach and a staff. I think a lot of those kind of flaws or, areas that lack can be hidden or not exposed because they're trying to put on a front. And I'm not saying anyone's fronting at all. I'm just saying this isn't I think where there's smoke, there's fire. And so maybe Mitchell wasn't frustrated with some people's lack of maturity or like professionalism, but there had to be some people, like, that's just, people just don't report random stuff like that. And so I don't know if those flaws would have been exposed if not for the familiarity, the stability that having a coach for 5.5 years brings. You have to come in and be professional and do your job. And sorry, I just wanted to touch on that, John.
No, and I agree with you. But to Sam's point of talking about, like, and we talked about this during the playoffs, Sam, watching the games at the arena, Sam Merrill is not getting looks. Well, that's falls on JB, but because Sam Merrill is not a player that can create his own shot. Everyone's like, oh,
right.
Well, he's not shooting because he can't create his own shot because he has a size disadvantage. And Max Strus will just chuck the ball. Like, too many guys are standing around.
That bro don't care.
What's that?
That bro don't care. He'll chuck it. It doesn't matter if he's 10 feet or 50 feet.
There's the other thing working against him is all of that, plus that there's no set offense. And if you're letting this Donovan just dribble and do whatever you want, like with LeBron, that's a problem, because Donovan was upset that he had all those minutes during the year because that contributed to his knee injury. So that is fair criticism.
Yeah.
How do you fix that? Well, I don't know. Draw up an offensive system that draws to the strength of your players, and JB has not done that.
Right. And I think the Cavs did themselves a great disservice by not, we all love Craig Porter Jr., nice rookie, all that. But, to me, Darius Garland has not been the same without Ricky Rubio.
Mm-hmm.
And where did you...
John brought that up the last pod, I think.
Yeah, why not go out and get a veteran point guard? I guarantee you, John Wall, now, he's not going to make you a championship contender, but John Wall would have come here and played behind Darius Garland for the minimum. And John Wall's a Rich Paul client, so absolutely would have done that. Go help Darius. And I think that they did JB a disservice and Darius Garland a disservice by not, they use Karis LeVert. JB's building him up as he's a backup point guard. And I'm like, LeVert's not a backup point guard. LeVert's game is what it is. He dribbles, and Sometimes he's hot and sometimes not so hot, which is fine. That's what a bench player is supposed to be. People are like, oh, Karis LeVert frustrates me. I'm like, all you want out of him is to be hot 2 out of every 3 games, because that's what bench players are. But he's not a point guard, and they have to play him as their veteran backup point guard half the time. So I think there's some flaws in the roster. I think LeVert's a fine player, don't get me wrong, but they're playing him out of position because his other option is an undrafted rookie point guard.
I want to ask this question because I think this has gone under the radar of all of the headlines we've missed. I think Kobe Altman needs to take some responsibility to this as well. We did not solve the perimeter shooting, the corner 3 problem. We did not bring in this. That's not JB's fault. The people that he signed that were the big fixes. Niang played 12 minutes, meaningful minutes in the series. And so these people, and I haven't seen Kobe at all getting any bad press the past 2 days. And so at some point, this has to be like, hey, JB's coaching with what he has. And as much as we love the Greg, that's on Kobe.
Yeah.
That's not on Bickerstaff. That's not on Garland.
JB's only coaching the players that are provided to him.
Yep.
And so you can rip Kobe for the free agent signings of Niang and Strus, Chase, to your point. I mean, that's more than $20 million a year for those 2 guys. And Niang looks like a guy that shouldn't be in the NBA. Out of shape, looks lost, confidence rattled. And I was a big proponent of him throughout the year. He's a completely different player in the playoffs versus during the regular season. The energy that you saw him have, gone. Looked like the first time he ever played basketball during those 2 series. Sorry.
Yeah, and that falls on Kobe, right? There was no corner 3 threat at all. And that's been a problem for 3 years. And that's huge for spacing. We have 2 7-footers. Mitchell drives the lane. If this is ad nauseum. How has that not been fixed? Every other team can figure out a player can hit at least 2 or 3 a game just to keep defenses honest.
Yeah. Well, in the cap situation, you've had Isaac Okoro there.
Oh, that's right. I love Okoro. Yeah.
Well, and he's, he's your best wing defender. You got a decision to make on him coming up.
Yeah.
I bet you they give him a 1-year tender.
Okoro? Well, yeah. Look, he's valuable in his own way. And certainly, unfortunately he's not going to ever develop into that corner 3 guy. But you're right, Chase. We heard it media day. The 3 of us were sitting there at media day when Kobe Altman said he's very excited that they addressed their outside shooting need that they really lacked against the Knicks in the playoffs last year. Well, they were like the worst shooting team in the playoffs this year.
And if not for Sam Merrill, they would have taken a huge step back. They stumbled into him. They tried to.
Oh, yeah, that was dumb luck.
That was a mistake.
Yeah. They didn't even. He probably didn't even think he was going to play. So yeah. It's of course it always. It's an organizational wide thing. You can't just blame the coach. Now the GM. I'm not saying Kobe Altman will do this, but most GMs will blame the coach. Say, "I got you the players. You just didn't know how to use them." Right. And that's called protect my own butt mode. That coaches, NBA coaches will tell you, my GM's in protect my own butt mode. Only they don't say butt. But anyway,
they say? I don't know.
Chase, you're the only one who uses foul language on this podcast. Thankfully, it's directed at John, not me. So,
gosh.
But
that aged great, didn't it? By the way,
yeah, that podcast is in my podcast Hall of Fame. I don't care.
It hit my Hall of Fame the second you said that.
I would rather be wrong predicting a Cavs win than right predicting a series 5-game loss. That's all I'm going to say. Fine, crucify me for predicting the Cavs to beat the Celtics in round 2 of the playoffs. That's fine. I'll die on that cross. That's fine.
Chase, you're the Jesus of the Cavs on the Break podcast, and
No.
John Sable's the Judas.
No.
And
John's the doubting Thomas.
I'm just like Peter or something.
No.
You know what, real quick, Sam, to your point, how the protecting my butt mode for GMs, normally that would work, but that wouldn't work here. Why? Because there's nothing that JB Bickerstaff would have been able to do that would make George Niang and Max Strus any better, because Strus still got the shots. Maybe he wasn't getting the looks that he probably would have liked.
Look, I think the Strus was a win. I think that was a good signing. I do.
Well, you traded Chetty for him, right?
Yeah, and that's an upgrade.
That's an upgrade. Although I can't believe we looked at it and Chetty played 72 games.
He did
with the Spurs. I never would have guessed that. But no, you're right, Chase. That's an upgrade for sure.
Is there a world, John, do you think, where both Kobe and JB are gone?
No, I don't think so.
Sam?
I don't really think along those lines because I don't foresee that. I think that'd be a stunner because, again, your team fought. Yeah. They battled, right?
Mm-hmm. Maybe the exit against the Magic. Maybe that's a reality.
They got beyond the step that they took last year.
Yep.
Next year, if you don't get to the conference finals, which is the next logical step, then you might gut the roster and fire the GM and all that.
Chase, if that was the case where they don't both come back, I think you would have heard it by now. I know we're only 24 hours removed, but if you're an owner like Dan Gilbert and you've seen enough and you're angry and you're upset, that trigger's pulled.
Or you just have the itch to do something. If he truly has been disengaged for so long and he's like, hey, I'm back. I want to put my mark. I want to get my name back out there. I'm healthy. I'm fine. I'm doing this. I mean, if there was an owner that, I don't know.
Well, Sam, we were told like 6 months ago that Dan is back and helping day-to-day stuff and that his son...
we saw him tweet for the first 2 times of the season, basically about the team.
Yeah, well, and he had done it
series,
and he had done it earlier in the season too, albeit not every day, but he'd still tweet a little bit. Like, I think he tweeted something about Jared Allen missed being an all-star snub.
Oh yeah. But what I'm saying is, he's clearly very invested right now because he's tweeted 2 things in like 2 weeks, which is, I just think I think Dan is very, very much back and very involved. And I agree with John. I think that with Dan being as historically reactionary as he's been, if he thought, boy, these 2 guys aren't working, he would have made that decision already and gotten rid of them.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's going to happen, but I just, all that to say, Kobe's gone unscathed the past 24 hours, and I don't think that's totally, I think at some point it's going to fall on him. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about Evan Mobley. I want to talk some more about Darius Garland and maybe project a little bit about what moves could look like and what the 24-25 Cleveland Cavaliers could trot out on the floor. Stick around, Cavs on the break. We will be right back. This episode of Cavs on the Break NBA podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service providing professional, affordable, and personalized therapy in a convenient online format. BetterHelp removes the traditional barriers to therapy and makes mental health care accessible to everyone. I've been using BetterHelp for the last 3 months, and I have to say, it has been absolutely amazing. Signing up was super simple, and after a brief survey, BetterHelp assigned me a licensed counselor to specifically help me through my problems. The app is super user-friendly and doesn't bog you down with the busy user interface, and you can talk or message with your therapist straight through the app. Valuing your mental health is one of the most important things you can do, and there's no better way to start than BetterHelp. Cavs on the Break is proud to highlight this company and offer a promotional code at checkout. Use promo code CAVSP3 for 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. That's CAVSP3 at checkout for 10% off the first month of counseling with BetterHelp. You will not regret investing in your mental health.
What's up, everyone? I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Tybus Powell.
And we are your hosts of The Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need to get you through the regular season, hopeful postseason, and I'd say off-season, Tyvus, but is there really ever an off-season for this team?
Thankfully for our podcast, Holly, there really never is when it comes to the Cleveland Browns. Don't miss our breakdown of each week's matchup, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we know, Holly, dogs gotta eat.
Yes, they do. So hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Orange is Oranger, Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sabol.
And I'm Scott Sabol, and we're hosts of the Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
The R&R podcast going to be rocking and rolling with you because football season is underway. College, Ohio State, the Power Fives, the MAC, the Browns. Michael Regai, are you ready to rock and roll with some football?
Yeah, I've been ready. This is our time of year. This is what R&R is all about. We're going to be with you every week. Kenny just said it, Browns, NFL, Ohio State centric. So you got to stay with us all fall and winter long here on R&R.
That's right. The Regai and Rhoda podcast coming to you here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Subscribe now and don't miss a show.
Hey, I'm Jason.
And I'm Gary, and we love ball cards.
And if you love ball cards too, good news. You just found your new favorite podcast. From breaks to grading.
And from collecting to flipping, join us on the Ball Card Show.
The sports podcast for the sports collector.
All right, we are back. Cavs on the break. Sam Amico, John Sabol. I don't even know just where to begin here. Just so much has dropped in the past 24 hours. We just spent the first half of the show. We talked about Donovan Mitchell, JB Bickerstaff. Let's talk about Evan Mobley. Had the best game probably of his Cavs career. Game 5 in Boston. Sam, you like what you saw there?
Yeah, of course, but I think that you need to get that consistent. You don't have to score 33 points every game, but you do need him to be more of a force on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Next season. That's the key. It's not, hey, he's going to, because sometimes those games, it's like, well, that's why his numbers are up because he had that 33-point night. But then the next 6 nights, he has 11 points, fumbles the ball around, doesn't look confident shooting baby hooks, doesn't go to the basket strong. So, I mean, I don't think the Cavs are expecting him to go for 33 or whatever, a night next year. But you do want to see that where it's like, look, we've got this other dominant guy besides Mitchell offensively. Yeah. And Mobley's defense, he's incredibly dominant defensively.
John, did we witness the solidification of Jared Allen's not coming back with Mobley's performance in game 5?
I don't think Jared Allen's not coming back because of the performance. I think he's not coming back for a variety of reasons. 2 things. One, the performance against Boston, I mean, he played completely different. He was attacking the rim. He was doing your Point Mobley chase.
Bro, don't even get me started on Point Mobley.
He was attacking the rim. He was aggressive. He even mentioned it after the game how what's the biggest thing he learned from the game and from the season is that he needs to attack more. He needs to have that ingrained into his head because if he wants to be that offensive threat that we all think he should be, he needs to do that. Defensively, he's there. But he needs that consistent offensive production and style of play, which falls on the staff again.
Yep.
They need to get it out of him. Maybe this game was just the right amount of confidence that gives him that can hold over to next year. We'll see. But do I think because of his performance, Jared Allen isn't going to come back? No. I think if they're going to get rid of any one of the guys, it was going to be Jared Allen. He's got 2 years left remaining on his contract. He's older, and I think he left a sour taste in the mouth of his players from all the reports that we're reading, of not trying to come back, allegedly not taking that shot to numb the pain to play. If that is all indeed true, which we are for this case are going to assume it's true from the reporting, I don't see how you bring him back there with the roster currently constructed with the exception of Garland, because I think if Mitchell comes back, Garland has to go as well. So then it's like, well, where do they go? And that's where the fun begins. There's a lot of different options out there where you can trade either Garland or Allen to. Sam and I have been talking a lot about this last few days, actually, but even before the game, even before all these reports came out, remember, Sam?
Mhm.
We picked two teams that looked like an option for Garland and maybe one for Jared Allen. Chase, we picked these like during the Celtics series.
All right, am I going to guess?
And then this is before the reports. Like Sam and I pegged that if they need to make moves, those two guys need to go. There were two teams that we narrowed ourselves down.
The Nets?
No.
Oh,
No, that was
what?
actually, I take that back. That was a third team, right? Sam, was the Nets? Was
That was
Brooklyn
for
one?
Garland, right? That's Garland. Or are you talking about just like in general?
I don't remember the Nets being mentioned.
I think we were talking about like guys from the Nets we'd like to have.
Oh, yeah, guys from the Nets, and that would have been like a Garland scenario.
Yeah. But that wasn't the two teams. But go ahead, Chase.
Golden State?
No.
Oh, never thought of that.
I never thought of that. Actually,
Charlotte?
Nope.
Okay, I don't want to sound silly. The Bulls. One more. The Bulls.
No.
Okay,
we
I'm
narrowed
done.
it down to San Antonio and New Orleans.
Unless you're getting draft picks back from San Antonio, I don't know what else there, but I can see New Orleans for Brandon Ingram, I guess.
Sam, you want to take why the Spurs?
Who for Brandon Ingram?
I mean Garland or Allen. I don't know.
If they called me and I'm David Griffin, they said we'll give you Darius Garland for Brandon Ingram, I'd hang up the phone. Be like,
Yeah.
Really? You know what I mean? And you're not alone there, Chase. I've seen that all over the internet. I'm like, there's no way the Pelicans would trade Brandon Ingram for Darius Garland, even though Brandon
stay
Ingram's
healthy.
an injury. He can't stay healthy, but so what? When he is, he's their second best player. You know, other than Zion.
Well, so what was your
Zion.
reasoning with the Pelicans? Like, what? Talk me through that
No,
one.
I think that we kind of said those would be natural trade partners. Perhaps maybe an Allen they've had interest in Allen for some time. I had a GM say the Wizards. Garland would be a natural thing for the Wizards. You could get good players back from them, and you could get picks, obviously protected picks. But look, if they're going to trade Darius Garland, let me start there. If they're going to trade Darius Garland, you're not getting a star back. You've got to get pieces that fit. We need outside shooting. Get an outside shooter. And we're going to need a point guard too, because we just traded our point guard. So you get an outside shooter and a point guard. They're not going to be all stars. They're going to be good players. You hope that you get some picks in there. You know, what you saw if you're the Cavaliers more than anything this season. We went 17 and 18, won 17 out of 18 without Darius Garland. How did we do it? By playing shooters, getting them the ball. Donovan Mitchell would create and get the shooters the ball. That's not a long-term solution. Donovan Mitchell doesn't want to, he's not a point guard, but you get that point guard who delivers the ball to your shooters. And, so it doesn't have to be a star. It just has to be somebody who fits. And I think if they do trade Darius Garland, that's what they're going to have to settle for, and it will probably benefit them more. Jared Allen, I am not on the train yet of trade Jared Allen. I'm just not. I think number one, he had a career season when healthy.
Yeah,
I know he made the All-Star team last, a few years ago. He was better this year than the year that he made the All-Star team.
The only reason why he made the All-Star game that year was because it's Cleveland.
Yeah, because it was Cleveland, and wasn't he an injury replacement even that year? Yeah. So, he was better this year than he's ever been, especially if you look at Orlando, that series, those 4 games he played, he was, other than maybe Mitchell, the 4 games that he played, you could make the case that Allen was the Cavs' best player in those 4 games.
Especially those first 2 games, Sam, because
first 2, yes.
Donovan had a horrible first 2 games.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that, okay, we have this whole injection story, right? Where supposedly this has been reported as it happened, and players the organization was frustrated. They offered him an injection to help the pain go away to play. he didn't want it. I think you can get past that. I really do, because the 2014 guys, they wanted Kevin Love 2014-15 when Kevin Love got his shoulder pulled out by Kelly Olynyk. They wanted him to play. And they said, you can play through that and you can do it. And Kevin Love blew off the Cavs, flew to New York and had surgery so that he didn't have to play. Well, guess what? Kevin Love stuck around.
Well,
so, you know.
Speaking of Kevin Love, another headline, he said he wouldn't mind finishing his career in Cleveland. Another thing that came out this week. I don't know if you saw that.
No, he said that before, though, too.
I'll tell you what, you could replace, Damian Jones or Tristan Thompson or one of those guys with a Kevin Love. Sure. I mean, you're going to have to fill out those spots somehow.
Well,
walk me through the Spurs trade.
I was just gonna say that because I got the roster up. Sam and I picked two guys that could be players that the Cavs would be interested in a trade for Darius Garland, because San Antonio really doesn't have a good point guard. You're looking at throwing lobs to Victor Wembanyama. Garland would fit there. He'd fit that mold. The two guys that I think would fit really well, Devin Vassell, both young guys, and Keldon Johnson. Two guys in their early to mid-20s that average double figures in points. Vassell at almost 20 and Johnson at almost 16 a game. They're dependable. They don't get hurt. I mean, they played 68, 69 games this year. Definitely good wing guys that they could, plug and play. Vassell is a 6'5" shooting guard, and Keldon Johnson is also a 6'5" small forward. So those two I think would be very intriguing.
I don't. Those are point guards or just guards?
Vassell's listed as a shooting guard,
wings.
And Johnson's a small forward. So he's got wings.
So I think if we are moving away from Garland, we need a tall point guard, like a 6'3", 6'4" point guard, because I don't think a 6'1", 6 that's the small backcourt's not going to work. That's where we get bullied. It's not going to work.
But Chase, these guys are 6'5".
So Mitchell's point?
No, I still think you would need to get a point guard at some point in there. I'm just saying for upgrade your wings. If you're trying to just, get somebody in there, those are two players you could get.
But I think
I still think you need another point guard. Don't get me wrong. We were just thinking of guys that would want Garland, and then what would you want in return?
Gotcha.
That was part of our exercise.
Oh man, I don't think either of those, unless we get 3 firsts back. I think
you'd get draft picks for sure back. You'd have to. Now you talk about the Pelicans. Sam, who did we nail down there that would be interesting?
I think it was Ingram.
Was it Ingram?
Some way.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know who else they would really
want
to give.
Out of there. You mentioned the Wizards, Sam. We looked at that roster.
Tyus Jones and Corey Kispert, and a player to make a salary match, and then picks. Tyus Jones, obviously the consummate pro. He's probably more of a fringe starter, though. I don't know that he's like a starter on a contending team. He's a really nice player, but I think he's kind of like, boy, he would be great as your top backup, maybe not a starter. Kispert, obviously, career season, outside shooter, great athlete. But, I mean, here's the thing, guys. Those are the kind of deals you're looking at for Darius Garland, especially, guys, if they do make it clear they want him traded, then all of a sudden your offers get worse, because now other teams know you're desperate, that Garland doesn't want to return. So all of a sudden you're getting, a banged up Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, and Ante Zizic back for him.
I got it.
Yeah, your leverage game just fell right there. That's for sure. It's funny. Tyus Jones actually originally drafted by the Cavs. Remember that?
That's right. Yeah, and had nice seasons in Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, he's a fine player. Great locker room guy. Kind of reminds me of Mike Conley Jr. not quite that good, but that same type of team first guy, doesn't care about his numbers, and a really good distributor. And I'm not saying, hey, this is going to be a trade that's huge and make a splash. It was just something I thought of because Washington's obviously looking to unload guys. The win there would be getting Kispert, who started for Washington, would come off the bench with the Cavs and I would assume, fill another need of an outside shooter. He's a really good outside shooter. He's a really good athlete too.
If the Cavs want to take that next step, all of those moves are not going to get us to the conference finals. I'm sorry. Bringing in a Devin Vassell, bringing in a Tyus Jones.
They won 17-18 with Sam Merrill starting. Why can't they get to the conference finals? Chase, let me ask you this.
Because we're getting rid of Darius Garland.
How many? You what?
You said 17-18 with Sam Merrill. I'm confused.
They didn't have Darius Garland those games. They didn't have. My point is, it's not about the name. It's not about,
star power.
You're not gonna make a splash with Darius Garland because guess what, Chase? Everybody around the league is saying what you're saying about Devin Vassell about Darius Garland.
Well, I don't want that guy.
I don't want that guy.
I found the trade. We need Lonzo Ball from the Bulls.
His bum knee. He may never play again.
Sure.
I would take LaMelo Ball for Darius.
Look, a tall guard, excels on defense, a facilitator. The Bulls need a shakeup.
I wouldn't trade Darius Garland to the Bulls because what if they get the best out of him?
It's going to happen anyway.
They would want you to trade.
That's the danger of trading a young rising star.
And you're also trading within the division, within the conference, which probably would be the smartest idea either. Real quick here, Chase, you guessed the Nets earlier, and Sam and I went down that road. That was not in our top two. There were two players on the Nets that I thought the Cavs would want in any trade, whether it's Garland or Allen. Dorian Finney-Smith, they were rumored at him for the last 2 years at the trade deadline, and then Mikal Bridges.
Yeah. Mikal Bridges moves the needle. Dorian Finney-Smith doesn't.
No, but you'd have to trade Garland. You'd have to trade Garland and Allen
to get those,
and probably somebody else to get even Bridges. Dorian Finney-Smith, you could probably get for Dean Wade, which is Chase is right. That's just trading for the sake of making a trade.
Yeah.
Dorian Finney-Smith, I saw him play a few times, and I'm just like,
look,
I don't like him either.
No matter how bad of a season Garland had, he's a point guard who's a playmaker who can finish shots, who now has 2 years of playoff experience and now a second round road win against Boston. And so the more that we see of him, the more we're not going to get back in return.
Well, they're certainly not going to get much in return for him now because he looked like a guy who should be coming off the bench. And he's got a huge contract. Now, I think, guys, here's a question I've been wanting to ask. What if the Cavs' only changes, what if their only changes this offseason are no more Tristan Thompson, no more Damian Jones, no Marcus Morris, and no, the end of the bench guys. What if everybody else is back, including JB Bickerstaff?
I'm fine with it.
What are your feelings?
Let's roll. I think that's a good idea.
I don't think that's a terrible idea. I get it. Like I said, I get it from a fan's perspective where you're so emotional and you're so agitated with a coach or whatever. Because I think you run the risk of making changes that don't help you.
Look, you said it, Sam.
Let me
go ahead, John.
Let me jump in here. Let me explain to you why that's a really dumb idea. It's a great question. It's a dumb idea, and if it happens, fans are going to revolt. but in emotion aside, I think it's the common sense of everything, Sam. Because if you saw the same thing happen, the same problems that the Cavs were dealing with throughout the year when it came to underperforming two young players who regressed, Darius Garland and Evan Mobley, a coach who is yet to make any adjustments. And you're just basically filling in your last three guys on the bench. The last three guys you said they're Morris, TT, and what was the other guy?
Damian Jones.
Oh, yeah, Damian Jones. See, I even forget his last name. And you're only picking those guys in there. You're trying to make that next step to get to the conference finals and hopefully to the finals. The way that roster is constructed, it's still flawed. There's still errors here. So it's one thing to bring back the roster. If you're going to bring back the roster, then you got to bring back a different coach. You're not improving anything. Or if you're bringing back the same roster, the same core, then you need to change your entire complementary players. I'm talking Wade, I'm talking Strus, I'm talking Merrill, I'm talking Niang. If you're looking at trying to bring the core back, including the coach, then your role players need to change. And that's not going to happen because Niang and Strus are under contract 3 and 4 years respectively. So something has to change because despite the injuries, this roster and this team had flaws and we all saw it. Sam, we've talked about it. Chase sometimes didn't like to look at it, but he kind of sees it.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's even on the realm of a possibility of things to happen because the other thing too is we mentioned Dan Gilbert and it's pressure and you want pressure to take that next step into win. And I think if you want to get rid of one of the two guys, Garland or Mobley, and you want to keep one of them, fine. I don't think if you want to make the limited amount of changes, that's your only change you're going to make is jettison one of those guys or both.
You mean Garland or Allen?
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know what I said. Yeah, Garland or Allen. Yeah. I don't think you have the patience without the amount of pressure to bring it back with all this turmoil and BS that we've been hearing.
See,
I don't even think it's on the wheel of options.
I don't think they can afford to gamble with the unknown of what could happen. We don't have a first round pick.
Yeah, we do. Cavs have the 20th pick in the draft.
Yeah, they got the 20th pick. Right.
Okay.
Yes. Right.
I
That's
think
easy to forget because they haven't had one.
But then we don't have one for how many years?
Well, you got to have one every other year, right, John?
Yeah, it's the bird rights. So what happens is they gave up 3 to Utah in 5 total, but 2 of those were pick swaps. So if the Cavs, let's say the Cavs had, I'm making this up, Chase. Let's say the Cavs had the 10th pick in the draft one year and it landed in the swap year and the Jazz were 19th. They'll be like, okay, I'm going to take that from you now.
Yeah.
So
I just think we know what we have. And honestly, if Embiid didn't get injured, we weren't the 4th best team in the East. We weren't. If everyone was healthy, it's Bucks, Celtics, Sixers, and Knicks.
Maybe
those are the 4 best teams.
And maybe
so,
the Heat or 5th. But don't forget.
I think we're the 5th best team. And so, do we want to roll a dice on? I don't know. I just, Sam, I don't think
the better question is, Chase, is this. Assuming JB comes back, and Sam, I'll ask this both of you.
Uh-huh.
Assuming Bickerstaff is back and you make just one move, what is the one move you're making? Is it, and assuming Mitchell resigns, is it trading Jared Allen or is it trading Darius Garland?
My move would, if all those things happen, is trading Darius Garland. Because
I would agree.
I think you're at the point now where you're pretty certain that doesn't really work, Mitchell and Garland. Now, you're not positive, but I think that you're pretty certain. And to me, Garland just had such a bad year under Bickerstaff that one or the other probably has to go. So you're in your scenario, Bickerstaff comes back, and then I think that you have to move Garland, and especially if Garland's agent doesn't think they work together. I think Garland wants to be and believes he can be the face of the team because he was before Mitchell got there. And he hasn't been since.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not Donovan Mitchell's fault.
No, I think those are all good points. I'm trading Allen because you can find people to replace Allen's production better than the ceiling of what Garland can be.
Yeah, I would agree.
That is very true.
And that's
it's a tough question though, isn't it? If you're
so what about this? trade Mitchell. I love Mitchell. I want him to retire, Cav. But if we've backed ourselves into a corner with contracts and age and these, and I mean, you know what I mean? I don't know. I just like all this what the offseason's for. But you
trade him for Darius Garland for Laurie Markkinen and Colin Sexton.
Yeah. So here's why I don't think if Mitchell doesn't resign, then Chase, you obviously trade him, right? Because you don't want to go through the whole lame duck player throughout the year and then you walk the next year. If you do trade him, though, if that comes, it's a very real possibility. It could happen. Yeah. The problem that the Cavs are going to run into is they are not going to get the same return out of Donovan Mitchell that they got for him.
Sure.
You know, trading away a player that just drafted an Ochai Agbaji, who, by the way, has not done anything. He has since been traded to Toronto. Colin Sexton, Laurie Markkinen, and 5 first-round draft picks with 2 of those pick swaps. So Donovan Mitchell's 2 years older. Yet his numbers are he's a better player now than he was in Utah. His back-to-back career years.
Yeah.
But he's injured now. So
yes.
I don't know Sam, I don't know what the value would be. I don't think you're getting that return. You got to get at least 2 first-round draft picks for him. At least.
No, the way you look at like the Rudy Gobert trade and those kind of trades where they're getting like 5 first-rounders and stuff. No, you'd get a lot for him. There's the argument that, yeah, they were on their way 2 years ago before they got him when they had Mobley and Allen and Markkinen, and obviously Sexton didn't play much of a role on that team. He was out most of the year. He played like 12 games. But Garland, had a career season. Mobley, to me, looked every bit as good, if not better than he does now. I wouldn't entertain trading Mitchell, but I could see where you guys would, bring that up. Like, hey, could they have taken these next steps that they took if they never made that trade?
Mitchell,
I believe they probably could have.
Oh, go ahead.
Mitchell's brought maturity. He's given Mobley and Garland the playoff experience that I don't think they would have gotten without him. And so they're paying for an education in these players that they've invested in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, if you're the Cavs too, you want him to take that extension so bad because you don't want to trade him, because you don't want to you don't want to try to get a return that's less than what you receive from him, even though it should be still a lot, but you don't want to be in that position.
I think it's easier to try a trade partner for Mitchell than it is for Garland. I think it's easier to trade and
you probably get better. You definitely get a better return.
All NBA shooting guard, than a ball dominant point guard like Garland, who is undersized. He is weak when he drives, prone to turnovers, and here I go slandering Garland again. When I was just like, I'm going to keep him.
Hey, here's a quick question for both of you. There was a report out. I think I read it on this website called HoopsWire.
Hoopswire.com.
Sam,
probably.
No, I think it was on your website. A destination for Jared Allen, the Thunder?
Was that on my website? Did Ashish write that? I didn't write that.
I thought it was on your website.
It could have been. No, I think that is, a team that I saw mentioned in there. So, yeah, look, the possibilities are endless. You're right. You're right. The Thunder were mentioned. It wasn't last night. It was like a week or so ago, I think.
Correct. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. That's something, but I don't know, what that deal would look like or how that would look like. I hate the idea of breaking up that core. But I think that and look, I saw Garland just as frustrated as anybody else. I'm sure the Cavs were extremely frustrated too with him, with all the turnovers. The playoffs, 4 of 17 in the closeout game. Just a lot of reasons to be like, he's just not delivering like you had hoped. That's the kind version. So, it's hard to say, yes, we want to bring them all back. And clearly, maybe Darius Garland has had enough. Maybe he's just been like, I thought this was going to go a certain way. 3 years ago when I made the All-Star team, and I thought that I was going to lead this team places, and he's just out of sorts here now. So
yeah, and you know what? Talking to him after some of these games, Sam, you could tell he was emotionally just burnt out.
He seemed. I mean,
these are after wins,
right? He plays hard. He's got a great attitude. He really does, in terms of his approach and his locker room demeanor and all that. There's nothing flawed about him. It's not like, oh, this guy's a real problem or a cancer or any of that. He's not any of those things. It's just, you're at a stage now where if you're Darius Garland, it's like, am I a fit here anymore? Maybe he's asking that. The Cavs are probably almost definitely asking that. So I don't know. I mean, look, I'm glad I'm just a writer. I always just accept whatever the team does as they're thinking. Because, I mean, this is their job. This is their full-time job. Figure out what works for our team. This is all we put all of our energy to. The rest of us, we're working other jobs. And we're kind of, we're not in the mix. We're watching, but that's not our job. It's not, and that's what their job is they're 100% focused on it. So I've always just trusted whenever a team makes a draft pick, they've done their homework. Doesn't always work out, but they did their homework because this is all they do. So I think that when they decide on Bickerstaff, when they decide on Garland, when they decide on these guys, I just think that, we get emotional, we get angry, and we don't like what they got back in return for this player. But I mean, I always just accept it as, let's see how it goes, So I don't know. I'm glad it's not my job. I'm glad that I'm not making those decisions because I just look at it like, you were a major disappointment after the All-Star break. You just didn't play the way you should have played after the All-Star break. And
you don't wish it was your job? You don't wish you were making those decisions?
No, if it was my full-time job and I was sitting there all day, every day thinking about these things, then I guess I'd be fine with it. But I wouldn't want to make it from, my kitchen counter or my dining room table where I put out the website.
Look, I'll never tell you if I won the lottery, but there'll be signs. Maybe it's like a G League team.
You wouldn't
Maybe
tell
it's
us?
like I sponsor a Y League team, but I'm going to be making some GM decisions somewhere.
That's because if Chase wins the lottery, he knows what a mooch I am, so he wouldn't say anything.
Oh, that's not true. Well, no matter what the Cavs do, we're going to be right here for you. Cavs on the Break with you all off season long. And that does it for this episode of Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Thank you all so much for downloading and listening. Shouts to the Press Play Podcast Network for making this possible. And shouts to Newark AutoBody, who was with us all half season and through this playoff press. Look, if you're in the Central Ohio area, you got a bump or scratch or a fender bender, check out Newark AutoBody or Zanesville Auto Body Shop. They will take care of you. I promise. They're the absolute best. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Cavs on the Break. We always follow back. Follow Sam on Twitter at Amico Hoops. Get all of his works and writings, hoopswire.com and at Wire Hoops. You can catch John Sabol on Twitter at John_Sabol and Sabol Bros on the Baseline Podcast and Fox News 8. The final Junkyard Dog Award of the season. Only because of all the news the past 24 hours. They got to give it to Sam, John. I don't know. What do you think?
Samuel, it is.
Sam.
I hope to be Junkyard Dog worthy as all this news is coming. We just started, I was like last night about 3 a.m. I'm writing this story on Mitchell, and I thought, what am I doing? We're going to be doing this all at least for the next till like July 8th, anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Special season. Love talking about it with you guys, and we'll be with you in the off season. Until then, Mike Breen, take us out.
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.